Hello, my dear friends. Welcome back, female founders of dental practices. Meghan Markle, I've seen, is having a new show called The Confessions of the Female Founder, and I thought that was such a genius name because guess what? Ladies, those of you who are starting dental practices, especially startups, you are a female founder. Did you realize that? All right. Today we're talking about how to go from an associate to an owner. I just finished enrollment for No Stress DDS Mastermind, and so many of you are in this stage. You are an associate right now starting a practice, either within the next month or within the next 6-8 months. A lot of you. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit more about what it's like going from an associate to owner and whether you're really ready for practice ownership. Okay, so we're going to cover the common myth that I see people think that is going to make them successful. I'm going to give you some statistics so that you can see it's not just my opinion. We're going to talk about the real requirements of practice ownership, the signs that you're ready, common mistakes to avoid, and of course, I will always leave you with the steps to take to be ready, okay? Because I want you to succeed. All right, so here's the common myth. I'm a great clinician, so I'll be a great practice owner. This is not true. You being a good doctor is not going to make you a great practice owner, my friend. I hear this often. I feel comfortable doing procedures, whatever your specialty is. So I think I'm ready for the next step. Completely two different skill sets. It's like saying, okay, I think I'm handling marriage well now. I think I've got this wife job down. Time to have kids. Totally different skills, okay? Clinical excellence alone is not enough, my sweet friends. Here's some statistics I pulled up. Did you know that only about 33% of dental practices currently are owned by female dentists in the United States? A third. Only 33%, ladies. And 38% of women dentists are reporting leaving dentistry entirely. 40%. 84% of it because of the burnout. 76% because of the work-life balance challenges. Hence why I'm teaching you guys how to have time freedom. 65% is practice management stress. And there's a burden of debt and lack of mentorship or support. It is completely true. We don't have enough female role models. So, my friend, here's another crazy statistic. So, a third of us is going to start a dental practice or buy existing. Does not matter. But did you know that out of those 30% of you that buy a practice, a third is going to leave within the first 5 years? I'm starting to realize that this podcast is starting to sound a little bit like doom. This is not my intention at all. On the opposite, I'm going to help you be successful. But I want you to be aware of the statistics, okay? I've shared, I don't know, I think it may be on Instagram or one of my monthly free masterclasses. I've shared this graph for anything new we're starting, and it has these points. It's like a dip. It's like a U-shape letter graph that shows how every time we do something new, like starting a dental practice or buying an existing dental practice, we go through these stages of uninformed optimism. Like, we don't really know what all it's going to take. We think it's going to be hard. But my friend, it's going to be 100 times harder. It's going to be so hard that you're going to be questioning why you made the decision. You're going to be questioning why you went to dentistry. You're going to be questioning your marriage. You're going to be questioning your sanity. Like, nothing prepares us for practice ownership. I don't think. I've spoken to a lot of you. I own 2 businesses. I don't think anything prepares you for that. It's almost like motherhood. For those of you who have children, did you guys really know what it's going to be like before you had a baby? If you are, let me know. I'm going to leave my email below. I'd love to hear from you. I'm going to interview you on this podcast. Most of us are not prepared enough. We're in the stage of uninformed optimism. Then we learn a little bit and we drop down to the informed pessimism. And then we drop down to this valley of despair and choice, right? Where a lot of us exit. And that's the point I'm trying to make. The 30% of you guys are going to quit your practice and sell it. That's 1.8 times higher than male dentists. So we clearly need some guidance and support, and I'm going to give it to you. But I want you guys to be aware of these statistics. And this is one of the biggest myths that I see that gets people into practice ownership, and then they're struggling and leaving anonymous posts in Facebook groups about how much they're struggling, is they're thinking, if I'm a great clinician, I'm going to be a great practice owner. This is not true. Now, what are the signs that you're actually ready to own a practice? I call them, one of them are kind of mindset indicators, right? Your thinking, your brain indicators, your maturity as a person, not even as a clinician, as a person, really, is that number one, you're thinking beyond clinical procedures. What do I mean by that? You are looking not just at your day. For example, you're looking at it not just, oh, okay, I don't have a too busy day. I'm an orthodontist. I'm going to give you an orthodontic example. I have all these adjustments and maybe I only have a couple of consults and these are quick aligner checks. If you're thinking this way, you may want to start thinking a little bit differently, because as a practice owner, you're constantly thinking about the bottom line. You're not just looking at clinical procedures. You're thinking, oh my God, I don't have enough consults. I have too many debonds. I don't have enough people coming in. What's going on with my marketing or my conversion? Why are people not starting treatments? Sign number two, that you're ready for ownership. So sign number one was that you're thinking beyond clinical procedures. You're not just focused on clinical procedures. You're starting to look at numbers. Actually, another good example of what it looks like to look beyond clinical procedures would be, let's say you have 4 chairs and you have 4 or 5 assistants. You have 4 assistants and a floater that day. And let's say you're a pediatric dentist or an orthodontist. That's probably not true for general dentistry. I don't think you guys can run 4 columns. Although maybe, I don't know. I'm an orthodontist. I'll give you an example. An orthodontist fills 4 chairs and there's 4 assistants at each chair, maybe even have a floater. Non-practice owner will be elated to have this ratio. You will think, it's going to be a great day. I have so many assistants. Or maybe you're like, I need another one. I need an overflow. As a practice owner, you're looking at the schedule, and if it's not busy, if you don't have every slot filled or maybe even double booked, if some patients didn't confirm their appointments, in your brain, you're calculating how much money you're losing because you're paying that assistant $25 an hour or whatever you're paid. So you have to pay them $200 that day, regardless, each assistant, right? $1,000 for your staff, but you don't have starts. You don't have consults. You're not booked in your schedule. That's what I mean by thinking beyond clinical procedures. You're not just looking at the schedule and you're thinking, okay, I got to talk to this mom about this thing. I have to make sure I double check an x-ray here. You're thinking about the ratio of the assistants for the number of patients and the type of procedures do you guys have. Do you see what I'm saying? So if you're thinking like this, you are ready to own a practice. Sign number 2, you are willing to make tough decisions. There's no way around it, my friend. As a practice owner, you have to be willing to start making tough decisions. If you tend to people please, if you tend to avoid uncomfortable conversations, A, it's going to be very challenging for you to have a practice. B, you are more likely to not be successful long term, more likely to be in the 30% that sells their practice within the first 5 years. As a business owner, you have to be thinking about your business outside of your patients as a doctor. These are two separate jobs. One hat, you're the clinician. A whole different hat is you're the business owner. The business owner needs to bring enough work to employ the clinician. You with me? And that means that sometimes you have to fire people. And that means that sometimes you have to cut costs, or you have to buy something that's less than you would like. Sometimes you have to network and talk to people you don't want to, and spend your weekend doing marketing activities when you don't feel like it. Yeah, it's part of ownership. You want to be ready for this. If you're ready for this, this is a great sign. Next sign number 3, is that you're ready to lead, not just work. Okay? A lot of associates show up, look at the schedule, thinking about their part, maybe chit-chat a little bit with the team, and then jump into their work. It's not enough as a business owner. As a business owner, you have to keep a close pulse on your team. You need to make sure that they are aligned with your vision. If you don't have a vision, if your vision is to make more money and do things my way, that's not a vision. Sorry to say that. But you have to think about, why does this practice exist? And if you can find a niche, something that differentiates you from other folks on the street, you're more likely to be successful. And I'll make another episode about niches. But you have to think about your practice from like the end to the present future. Like, why are we doing this for? What is the ultimate goal? You don't want to just be thinking, well, I don't know, I've been out of school for 10 years. I think I need to own. That's the next step. Or like, I don't know, I can't find the husband, so maybe I'll buy a practice. You're not ready. That's not a good reason. And then the sign number 4 that you're ready for ownership is that you're financially ready. You thought about how much you're willing to go in debt if you need to get a practice loan. You looked at your emergency fund. You know your credit score. Maybe you spoke to the lenders. You thought about marketing. You thought about what you're going to do if you don't make profit for 3 years, 5 years. So many of us maybe create a marketing plan for our first year. We're like, I'm going to make all this money. It's going to be great. What if you don't? Did you know that major companies, like we're talking Amazon, Temu, Target, they are going into enormous debt for 3 to 5 years before they finally make profit? That's part of their strategy. We as dentists, we're so lucky because so many of us make profit from the first year. But you want to be prepared that what if it takes me 3 years, 5 years to even break even? What are you going to do for a living? What are you going to do for money? What is your financial strategy? So these are the 4 things that you are ready for practice ownership. If 1, you're thinking beyond clinical procedures. 2, you are willing to make tough decisions. 3, you're ready to lead, not just work. And 4, you're financially ready. Okay, now I'm going to tell you the common mistakes that I see that people bring to coaching, and I see in groups, I see at conferences, online, just talking to people, that I want you to avoid so you don't end up being that 30% of women founders that leave their practices, quit, sell them. Number 1 mistake I see often is relying solely on your spouse for business advice. Maybe your husband wife, your partner has financial education. Maybe they have an MBA. Maybe they have another business, not dental. And you're thinking, I'm a good doctor. He knows the numbers. It's going to work. Very challenging to work with your spouse, number one. Number two, do they have experience in dentistry? It's different. Every business is different. Brick and mortar from online, they're a little bit different. They're the general business strategy advice out there. But you want something that's very specific for dentistry to ensure your success as much as possible. And relying solely on your partner is not a good idea. And I'll tell you what to do, okay? I'll tell you next steps. But that's, I see, mistake number one. Mistake number two is waiting for perfect timing. Perfect timing doesn't exist. Just like if you heard that advice about when should you have kids, often people say when you feel ready. I feel like this is such a tricky advice because you feeling ready depends on your thoughts. Our thoughts create our feelings. And so you're just literally sitting here banking on waking up with the thought, I am ready. Right? It's not a good strategy. So is perfect timing. Perfect timing is not something you wait for. Hear me out. Perfect timing is something you create, my friend, by knowing the steps to take to be ready. You with me? I don't want you to just sit and wait for perfect timing. It's never going to come. I don't know, maybe you'll be like 1 in a million wins the lottery, or I don't even know, 1 in a billion. And you're like, but even then, just because you've gotten $1 million, $10 million, does not mean that you're going to successfully invest that money into something that is going to become a machine. I'm going to make another episode. I'm realizing I have to create an episode about the machine of your business. That's what you want to create in order for your business, your practice to be predictably profitable. All right, so don't wait for perfect timing. Create one. Mistake number 3 to avoid is focusing solely on practice numbers. I speak to so many of you. You are buying practices and you're telling me, I'm doing my due diligence. I'm looking at the practice numbers. Let me tell you something, friends. These numbers could be fudged and often are fudged by the doctor that sells the practice. I'm not saying that people who are selling practices are dishonest. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying that this happens. And relying solely on numbers is not a great strategy. First of all, because these numbers may not be correct. And I coach fairly frequently people who bought an existing practice and they thought that they would avoid all the pains and headaches of a startup. But now that the contracts ran out, a year and a half later, they are basically out of patients and it's a startup. So that's one thing. But also another thing, let's say you talk to the CPA, you do the practice analysis and all the numbers are great and they're true and they're real. Numbers is not the only thing that is going to determine whether you're going to be successful or not. You have to understand team dynamics. Because a lot of the time, current success of the practice, that's for you folks who are buying existing practices, the success of the current practice depends on the culture that the previous doctor created and on the previous doctor's referrals, especially if you're a specialist. I see it very often when the doctor sells the practice and then the staff leaves. By the way, if you're planning to buy a practice, just a friendly heads up, there's a very high chance, I can't remember what the statistic, I think it's like 80% chance for staff turnover if you buy an existing practice in the first 1 or 2 years. Basically, everybody's going to leave and it's not your fault. You're not bad. And I'm sorry if you can hear my children in the background. You're not bad. That is just normal part of it. You guys have different personalities. Everybody's going to smile and be nice when the doctor that sells the practice introduces you. Obviously, that's normal. And then, it's going to be first excitement, first couple of months. And then 6 months later, that's when things get real and your personalities will start maybe rubbing each other a little bit the wrong way, right? So you need to take this into account. So as a new practice owner, especially if you're buying an existing practice or you're planning to buy an existing practice, you want to be prepared and have systems for how you're going to hire new people, new folks. Again, it goes back to what's your practice's vision, because you want to be hiring the best possible people. Then you want to be training them and you want to be holding them accountable. That's how you build a machine. And that's what associates don't know how to do. So do not neglect, please, team dynamics and solely focus on practice numbers. They're not the only thing that's going to bring success. All right, next steps. We talked about the myth, the number one common myth. If I'm a great clinician, I'll be a great practice owner. That's not true. We talked about statistics. 38% of women, did I say 38? Buy practices. Let me double check my numbers. I'm looking at it. 33% of dental practices are owned by women dentists. And 38% of women are leaving dentistry altogether. And out of those 30% of women dentists that own practices, 30% of them are selling practices within the first 5 years. So I don't want you to be in that statistic. So what are the next steps that you can take to ensure that you succeed? Step number one is I want you to think about your advisory team. Who are the people that are going to help you make your practice successful, be it at a startup or you're buying an existing practice? I want you to have a village. I want you to have a team of specialists, of people who are specializing on that. This is a worthy investment. And one of the biggest suggestions I have for you is to have somebody who either had an experience with owning a practice or somebody who can really help you manage the mental game of going through all of this and making these decisions and going through the chaos of firing and hiring and a steep learning curve. Like, you want somebody who's going to help you not lose your head in this process, because that's how you quit. That's how people get burned out and they just quit. If you never quit, you will succeed. But you have to persevere long enough. And the skills that got you to be successful where you're at right now are not going to get you to be successful as a practice owner. I'm so sorry to say that. But for right now, you've been largely relying on yourself to become successful. You pushed through to get good grades. You pushed and worked really hard to negotiate deals and find things. You practically solely relied on yourself. Now you have to rely on team. You have to rely on the treatment coordinator to make sales. That's your bottom line. You will be heavily depending on people. So you need to learn how to pick them well, how to train them, and know how to hold them accountable. Okay? So build your advisory team, and I highly recommend to have financial people there, to have accounting and attorneys. You probably know about this. But what you are missing often, I see you guys, is the mental piece. Who's going to help you keep your mind on track from quitting? Step number 2, develop leadership skills. Start developing them now as an associate. If you're in a practice transition, find a course, find a mentor, somebody who can help you become a better leader. Step number 3 is create transition strategy. I want you to think about how you're going to transition from your associate job to owning a practice, be it a startup or you buy an existing practice. I want you to have a plan. If it's going to happen the next year, amazing. If it's going to happen in the next 2 years, amazing. What are the steps? What are you going to do each month? What needs to get done? You want to have that strategy laid out. And then what's going to happen year 1, year 2, year 3? You want to map out like a whole 10 years so that you're prepared. That would be my best tips. Build your advisory team, develop leadership skills, and create your transition strategy. All right, my tweet friends, you are not going to be that statistic. I've got you. We're going to beat it, but we have to be prepared. Love you all. Thank you so much for listening. I'll catch you next week. Bye.